Welcome to this Schooling Online production. This lesson will go through a plot summary of chapters 7 to 9 in Volume 2 of Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus. The monster has just finished telling Victor about the history of the de Lacy family. What a saga! But Victor hasn't heard anything yet. The monster's tale is about to reach its terrible climax. It will be interesting to see how Victor responds. Crouched in his tiny hut, the monster pitied the de Lacy family for the suffering they'd endured. But while the de Lacys lived in poverty, they still had each other. To the solitary monster, this was the greatest luxury of all. It was now late summer, and the monster occupied himself by improving his mind. He stumbled upon a leather bag in the forest which contained some fascinating books: Paradise Lost, Plutarch's Lives, and The Sorrows of Werther. Each of these books increased the monster's understanding of mankind, except he took every word of them as absolute truth. This caused him to be deeply affected by the suffering of the characters. He's such a sensitive monster. The Sorrows of Werther, with its themes of unrequited love and suicide, made the monster weep bitterly. But Plutarch's Lives had a completely different effect. It described ancient heroes and scenes of mighty action. But it was Milton's Paradise Lost that affected the monster the most. He was enthralled by the stories of Satan, Adam and Eve, and the Garden of Eden. The monster envied Adam's perfect form and relationship with his creator. But of all the characters in Paradise Lost, the monster felt he resembled Satan the most. Then again, even Satan had his devils to keep him company. The monster was utterly alone. Hey team, just a reminder, if you like this video, please hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. It really helps the channel out, and our next upload could be on something taught in your next class. Thanks, and back to the video. This led the monster to take another look at some papers he'd stolen from Victor's laboratory. It was Victor's journal, complete with all the details of the monster's creation. At this point, the monster pauses his story to hand Victor his journal. You can imagine the sinking feeling in the pit of Victor's stomach. The monster knows everything. Back when he first read them, the papers horrified the monster. He cursed Victor for making him so hideous. Why did Victor even bring him to life at all? The monster comforted himself that the de Lacys would be different. After all, he'd spent nearly a year spying on them. They weren't like Victor. They were kind and humble. The monster was confident that they would look past his deformity and see his virtues. So, he spent the next few months practicing his language and sharpening his wits. He wanted to give himself the best chance of winning the de Lacys over. He decided it would be best to enter the cottage when the old man was there alone. Since old de Lacy was blind, he wouldn't freak out at the monster's horrid appearance. Smart move, monster. So, one sunny day when everyone had gone out except old de Lacy, the monster knocked on the front door. When the old man invited him in, the monster told a few white lies about being a tired traveller. This won him an invitation to sit by the fire and rest a while. De Lacy was surprised to hear that the monster also spoke French and asked where he was headed. The monster said he was travelling to the home of a French family. He was seeking their protection, but was scared they might reject him. The old man comforted the monster and asked for more details about the family, thinking of a way to help his mysterious guest. The monster didn't know what to say at this point, so he broke down and sobbed. Suddenly, the monster heard footsteps. Felix, Safi, and Agatha had returned. Oh no! The monster seized the old man's hand and cried out for his protection. He also blurted out that the de Lacy family were the ones he was really seeking. The old man was shocked and demanded to know who this traveller was. But it was too late. When the others entered the cottage and saw the monster clinging to the old man, Agatha fainted, Safi fled, and Felix attacked the monster with a stick. Poor monster, all those months of preparation for nothing. He could have torn Felix's limbs off, but he was too devastated to fight back. Instead, he escaped the mayhem and retreated to his hiding place. There he sat, stewing in his anger until nightfall. As soon as it was dark, the monster ran out into the woods and howled his anguish into the night air. Then he galloped through the forest until he collapsed with exhaustion and despair. After some much-needed time out in the forest, the monster started to feel a bit better. Did he overreact the previous day? Could he try and gently speak with the old man again? With renewed hope, the monster crept back into his hut and waited for the de Lacys to start their day. But the usual hour passed, and nothing stirred inside the cottage. No one was there. Then he overheard Felix approach and speak with some men. The de Lacys had fled the cottage in fear of the monster, even though they were still paying rent and had a garden full of ripe produce. He would never see the de Lacys again. This filled the monster's heart with hatred and desire for revenge. That night, he tore up the de Lacys' garden, burnt down the cottage, and fled into the woods. He knew now that there was only one person in the world he could turn to, his own creator. He also knew from the journal that Victor resided in Geneva, so that's where he headed. It was a long and difficult journey, made worse by some terrible encounters. One morning, he saved a girl from drowning in a river. He dragged her to shore and tried to revive her, only to be shot by a man who thought the monster had hurt her. That's the thanks he got for saving a human life. Will he ever catch a break? The monster declared war against mankind and shuddered with rage until he fainted from pain and blood loss. It was weeks before the monster was well enough to travel again. When he finally reached the outskirts of Geneva, he hid in the fields to rest and plan his next move. Just as he was falling asleep, the monster was disturbed by a small boy. He seized the child, hoping he could make the little boy love him and be his companion. Naturally, the child struggled and screamed in terror. He vowed that his father, Monsieur Frankenstein, would punish the monster. Frankenstein? Upon realizing that the boy belonged to his arch enemy, the monster decided to make the child his first victim and wrung his neck. Poor little William. The monster was pleased with his hellish deed and took the boy's pretty necklace as a token. He gazed at the miniature portrait, admiring the lovely face of the woman in the picture. The monster knew that he would never enjoy the companionship of someone so beautiful. Filled with rage, he left the murder scene and entered a barn where he found a pretty girl asleep on some straw. He whispered to her, pretending that she was his lover. Ew, creepy much? But the thought that neither she nor anyone else ever would be his lover made the monster bitter. He decided that the sleeping girl would pay for the child's murder and planted William's necklace on her. Poor Justine! Talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The monster hung around his crime scene for a while, hoping to catch a glimpse of Victor. But he eventually headed into the mountains. Now and then he considered suicide, but the monster had a burning passion in his heart. He knew what he really wanted, a female companion. This is what Victor must create so that there can be peace between them. Oh, heck. Having finished his tale, the monster stares at Victor, expecting a reply. But Victor just stares back blankly. He doesn't get the assignment, so the monster spells it out. Make him a female monster so he can love her and cancel his war against mankind. Victor refuses. The monster strangled little William and sent Justine to the gallows. How can he trust him? Instead of threatening Victor, the monster tries to reason with him. He is only vicious because he's been treated in the worst possible way. The monster would love nothing more than to live peacefully in society, but people can't cope with his appearance. If he continues to live as a wretched outcast, he will only become more violent and destructive, especially towards Victor. Okay, maybe that was a threat. The monster controls his rage and promises Victor that, if he makes him a lady monster, Victor will never see either of them again. They will retreat into the South American jungle and live like harmless hermits. They'll even be vegetarian. But Victor's still not convinced. What if he just wants a female so he can breed an army for his war against humanity? So, the monster makes one last passionate appeal. Victor must admit he sure is an intelligent creature. He'd also begun life as a peaceful soul. Perhaps a lady monster really would help him rediscover his virtue. After weighing up all the monster's arguments, Victor finally grants him his request, but only if the monster and his hideous bride live in exile forever. The monster solemnly swears it, but warns Victor that he will be watching and waiting. When his bride is ready, he will appear. Then he suddenly gets up and flees the hut before Victor has a chance to change his mind. The sun was setting, so Victor gets a move on. He journeys through the night, only stopping halfway to vent his agony to the night sky. At dawn, Victor arrives in Chamonix and leaves immediately for Geneva. When he finally arrives home, his wild appearance frightens his family, but he doesn't answer any of their questions. His job now is to save them all by doing something he dreads. It's Operation Monster Bride. Will Victor really go through with it? The real question is, what will the monster do if he doesn't? We hope you enjoyed this Schooling Online production. For more easy lessons, check out our other videos.